This is the Art of Darkness podcast with Kevin Kautzman
and Brad Kelly. We're a couple of very online writers interested in the dark side of what drives creative people to create against all odds.
This show is about art and the people who make it, what it costs them, and what it takes to bring something unique and impactful into the world.
Each episode, we excavate the life and work of an artist you might think you know.
Don't worry, they're all safely dead.
On every episode, we try and find out just what the hell was wrong with them and how they worked through their darkness to create something that lives on after them and continues to move culture.
Find us online at artofdarkpod.com and on Twitter at artofdarkpod. All right, we've got some sponsors for the pod now.
Wait, what?
Every link you need for the things we talk about here is at artofdarkpod.com/sponsors. First up, books.
If you're into this podcast, odds are you're probably a reader. We've got links to buy new books from bookshop.org and used books from alibris.com.
And if you want to listen to your books, we recommend and use audible.com.
It's great, and the catalog is huge.
All right. So if you're listening to this, you are online.
Maybe you're very online.
You probably have a website or are thinking of starting one. Maybe you want a website like artofdarkpod.com. We built that with WordPress, which is by far the most popular way to create websites. And the single best host for serious WordPress is WP Engine. I've personally used them for over a decade now, and I don't host my websites anywhere else. Go to artofdarkpod.com/sponsors and click on the WP Engine link to learn more.
Finally, the best way to support the show is at patreon.com/artofdarkpod. Get the bonus After Dark content for every episode, access to the book club, and more.
Thanks for supporting Art of Darkness. And I don't think that was too painful. I think we did a pretty good job there.
Yeah, that sounded good.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
We are back in the dark room. I'm Brad Kelly. This is Kevin Kautzman. Kevin, how you doing? Kevin's freshly shaven. He looks amazing. Handsome.
Hey, y'all.
Yeah.
I'm shorn like a spring lamb.
I like it. Now, next thing, we just got to get it to come off the top. That's the next.
Oh,
that's the
no.
step.
Yes. No.
Yes. Yeah, see?
Oh, gracious.
Dale knows what we're talking about. So we're back in the dark room, and that means we're talking about a subject we've already talked about, and we bring in a special guest to help us do that. In this case, we have the great J.L. Mackey, author of Cowboy Church, mastermind behind the Double Dealer magazine. J.L., thank you for joining us. Pleasure to have you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, man.
Sure, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think so. Real quick, so patreon.com/artofdarkpod to support the show. Today, we are going to, as we always do for every episode, for our Patreon folks, we're going to have a After Dark episode, 20 to 30 minutes, talking more cash. I got something juicy, but I'm not going to talk about it quite yet. But before we get into this, I want to talk to Mr. Mackey here. Tell us about... So first of all, people should read Cowboy Church. Great novella out there. Southern Gothic. Yeah, just wonderful. People should definitely check that out. Highly recommend. I'm slightly biased, but it should be. You should definitely check it out. But I really want to know about, because I'm fascinated by this. Tell me about Double Dealer.
So Double Dealer was a lit magazine published in New Orleans in around the turn of the century, I think the 20s.
Yeah.
And it didn't last very long for whatever reason. There's not a lot of material to read on its history itself. And it published some notable people for the time: Sherwood Anderson, Hemingway, Faulkner, people like that. And then it just kind of went defunct after, I think, 2 years.
Okay.
And I'm in a group chat with a couple people, one of whom is Chris Sandbach. And he was like, we should revive this. We should do something with it. That would be really fun. And we were like, yeah, that would be fun. And then we just, that's where the conversation ended for 6 to 8 months. And then someone brought it up again, was like, maybe we actually should do that though. What would that look like?
Yeah.
And so we talked about it for, another 3 or 4 months, how that would work, how we would make decisions and stuff, who's who's going to be in charge of what, or we're going to trade responsibilities with every issue, et cetera, fundraising, dealing with money, handling money, everything top to bottom.
Cool.
And then it eventually came together, and we have some kind of like loose structure that we're going with for now. It works reasonably well for us.
Cool.
And then we had our first issue a couple months ago, which was digital only, just because I wanted to get some interest. I didn't think anyone would be willing to pay for a first issue, and they're not really sure what the vibe is or what's in it, that kind of stuff. And then our second issue, which will be in the end of September, which will feature people we invited to write. So that'll be cool. And then we'll be paying writers, and that was kind of one of our larger like points, I guess, if you will, is we wanted to pay people, because I don't know of any like indie publisher or magazine or whatever is paying people. I don't think Expat does. I don't think Moonshine and Magnolias does. I don't think Apocalypse Confidential does. So we thought that would make us stand out at least a little bit, marginally. And then we also just kind of wanted to change a pace from a lot of the stuff that gets published in the indie world, which frankly I don't think is particularly good. That's just my opinion. Okay. So I wanted to be in a position to say this is good, this is not. Kind of. So
I get that. Well, it's cool, man. Like I love seeing people start something from scratch, kind of, you know. Obviously that's what we've done on this show, and we've made a lot of friends on the internet who are also trying to doing the thing. So, you know, we
talking to my friends in the pewter, talking to my computer friends.
Yeah, that's right. Hey man, sometimes you guys can make something happen. So I'm excited about this, and I love the idea of taking an old magazine that lasted for a while, that has a certain aura to it, has a certain kind of mystique and vibe to it, and kind of bringing that back. There's something really cool about that. Like and I was vaguely familiar with the Double Dealer. I don't know if I ever even read it, but I'd seen covers, and it just always kind of seemed like this cool thing. When I heard you guys were doing that, I was like, oh, that's sweet. What a good idea. So
it is. We tried really hard to figure out who the original artist was. I think they were just an in-house artist. They never had a signature or like a maker's mark on any of the art. I couldn't find it anywhere for the life of me, unfortunately.
And they're great too. That's kind of a shame that person doesn't, you know, get the credit. Yeah, they're very cool. So yeah, we'll be looking out for that, and definitely promoting the issue 2 when it comes out. So we want to talk a little bit about Johnny Cash, and this can go wherever we want. But you know, I wanted you on, and was kind of thinking, well, what makes the most sense? And thought about Hemingway, and thought, you know what would be cool? Let's talk Johnny Cash, because I know you're a Johnny Cash fan. I think that's fair to say.
Yes.
I don't know if anybody isn't. Is there anybody who isn't, sort of, on some level? I mean, you know,
there'll be somebody who's like, overrated too much. The new stuff was gimmick, and the Beatles are overrated, man. Johnny Cash is overrated, man.
Yeah, for sure. But so one thing that's kind of interesting about Johnny Cash is he's sort of like, and I was sort of guilty of this for a while, for a lot of people, he's like the only musician that qualifies as country that they listen to, right? They don't know anything else about it.
Oof size. Oof.
But so I want to ask you, like, all right, let's just assume Johnny Cash is on the Mount Rushmore. Who are like a handful of others? Like, imagine somebody who's into Johnny Cash but hasn't listened to anything else that might qualify as country. I know the boundaries of these things are a little blurry, but like, who else would you put up there?
That's a really good question. And I think a lot of people, speaking to your point, I think there's a lot of people for whom the only country artist or musician they like is Johnny Cash, because he's obviously country, but he's also like, he speaks to the punk and like emo kids in some kind of way. He's kind of sad and mournful and introspective and all this kind of stuff. So there was something definitely uniquely about his music that kind of, you know, speaks to a broader, you know, sentiment or like general kind of vibe. But beyond him on Mount Rushmore, I could think of some modern artists, but from his era, that would be hard to say because I don't know anyone listening to Merle Haggard, Willie Nelson, Johnny Paycheck, like any of those other people. Everyone listening to those people, they make a point to listen to country music. But
Right.
I could give you some modern people, but even
Yeah,
then, I wouldn't say it's
give
on the
us
same scale.
some modern people. Yeah.
Coulter Wall.
I would, yeah, to a degree, maybe, yeah. There's definitely a lot of, at least these days, there's a lot of crossover between like country and almost soft rock and Americana. So people
Yeah.
like Jason Isbell.
Mhm.
Lots of people listen to Jason Isbell that wouldn't otherwise listen to like, rockabilly or like country like that, or even Americana, I guess most people would call it. I
Mhm.
think he would definitely be up there for modern ones.
All right. All right. Yeah. Who else is up there? And it's
What do we think
interestingly,
about this new guy that
I
just
was just
dropped
gonna
on the
say
Bird website,
Oliver
Oliver?
Anthony, man.
I mean, that went viral. I'm immediately suspicious when something just instantly rockets into consciousness,
Do you
and
think
I
he's
can
a
already
CIA
see
agent or
I
something?
can
What
already
what
see
is
the
he?
backlash. No, I'm not.
Oh,
I dug it.
yeah.
I was like, okay, this is interesting, right? But now
It,
you
it
can already see people on Twitter are saying this is some tiny desk shit.
yeah.
Like, what
This
is
poor
this?
what
You
what
know,
I feel bad for is this poor guy's gonna probably have his life torn apart here in the next couple of weeks.
hopefully he's smart about it and he gets somebody picks him up and he goes on tour. That would
Yeah.
be, and
Yeah.
hopefully well, in any case, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see. It's interesting that it gained that kind of traction, right? I mean, it's very yeah, it's kind of fascinating. It's fascinating to watch that happen over the course of literally like the last 48 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed just scrolling today, he just got a Twitter account like yesterday and he's
Mm-hmm.
got like 200,000 followers or something. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Interesting.
mean, I want to hope that he's just, because people are going viral left and right for the most
Yeah.
R-worded stuff. And
Yeah.
I want to hope that he was just the one wholesome guy that made it viral.
Yeah.
I hope that for him, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Wish him the best for
I
sure.
listened back to some of his other stuff. This song that came out, for folks who haven't listened to it, Rich Men North of Richmond, it's the clearly like the best recorded of any of his stuff. Like the most time and effort and good tech was used to actually record him. But like it's all of his other music is like that, not in a bad way. Like it's all strong, super strong voice, thematically very kind of on the same page. Like, yeah, and guys pretty talented. Yeah, so
It remains to be seen.
yeah,
It'll be
yeah.
an
Well,
interesting
I think
thing.
about
Mm-hmm.
milkshake duck. Does everybody know the milkshake duck meme?
I don't think so.
Yeah, so it's a cartoon. It's like a webcomic thing, and it's like basically it's making a joke of like this duck that drinks milkshakes, and all of a sudden everybody loves milkshake duck. Oh yeah, yeah. And then like the next day, the headline is turns out milkshake duck is racist. And everybody's boo.
That has already begun, and it's just like
Yeah,
it's the
exactly.
discourse on the internet is just totally insane. It's like something that seems pure comes out, and then just 2 days
Yeah.
go by, and immediately just the spit takes start coming from every single direction.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right,
very
right.
interesting. What I know you've got some juicy stuff for the
Yeah.
After Dark, Brad, for Patreon, patreon.com/Art of Dark Pod. Earlier this week, we dropped Kahlo, 5 hours on Frida Kahlo. We dropped 5 hours plus on Milton, John Milton, and we're seeing some love on Patreon. Numbers are steady. Love to see it. What do you got for this After Dark, Brad?
Yeah, we're going to talk about the time that Johnny Cash was robbed at gunpoint in Jamaica. It's kind of a big deal in his life, and it's a very interesting story. There's also ghosts associated with this story, underground tunnels. There's a couple of other interesting little tidbits, but fundamentally, we're going to be talking about the time Johnny Cash was robbed at gunpoint in Jamaica.
Patreon.com/Art of Dark Pod. You're not going to want to miss it. Very exciting stuff. So what do you got? Yeah. What are we going to talk about in terms of Cash today? This is fun.
One thing is I want to see what JL's favorite Johnny Cash album is. What's the best? What's the best Johnny Cash? Or maybe even the best song. Or yeah.
I mean, I
the wheels are turning.
I don't know that I really want to say um, one is better than the other.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I could and make an argument for one, but
Yeah.
I like most of his stuff except for his concept albums. They were a little bit out there for me.
Yeah.
Um, Ring
I
of
felt
Fire is probably my favorite song, but like I can Sunday Morning Coming Down is
yeah,
could also be number one or number two for me.
classic. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting when he went into the concept albums. They have individual songs on them that are good, but they don't. Well, see, the thing is, there was a big. He wasn't the only person doing this. There was a big thing in the '70s, like he got successful, and then like he started making. Wasn't there some rock band that made a I swear to God, this is true. They made like a King Arthur on ice spectacle as part of their concept album. Like people were doing ridiculous things back then. And Spinal Tap sort of
Yeah, I
played
was
on
going to
them.
say, and the legacy lives on, hewn
Yeah.
into the living rock of
Yeah.
Stonehenge.
Right. And so Johnny
Yeah.
Cash kind of got pulled into that a little bit,
Mm.
I think.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean, Pepper blew everybody's minds.
that's
And
true.
yeah,
That's true. And there
they're
are a
like,
lot
wait,
of
we could tell stories with these albums.
right, 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 right. Well,
Yeah.
this is one thing that I think it's interesting because and this is a tradition in all forms of music, but certainly the case in country music, is I when were preparing for that episode, our core episode, on Johnny Cash, I pretty much went back and like listened to the entire discography, like beginning to end, and sort of like, all right, now I'm listening to this one, now I'm listening to this one, and gosh, you kind of, as a writer, I'm kind of looking at some of these songs. Not that he wrote every single one of them. It's like some of these are great short stories. They're just great little encapsulated. Big Iron, for instance, just a great little short story
Yeah.
put to music. And a lot of his songs are that way. And it got me thinking of like, is there an influence? Do you think you have any influence from music, from these sort of storytelling songs on your own writing process?
I would probably not overtly, maybe
Mm-hmm.
subconsciously, because I spend so much time listening to not just country music, but the older country music, which I claim is better largely because the writing is a lot sharper
Mm-hmm.
and it's usually focused on telling a story rather than conveying some type of like amorphous sentiment, like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
modern music is,
Mm-hmm.
country included.
Yeah.
But no, I'm always like intrigued and astounded by how I mean Johnny specifically, how much he could say with how little, and how precise and clean the language was, and it still gets across like very very complicated feelings and emotions and stuff like that. So I again, I don't know if I would say that's like a very conscious effort on my part, but it's something I definitely think about within the context of country music. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, there is a certain economy that is pretty impressive. Yeah, and again, not that he even wrote all of them. He wrote a lot of. I think he wrote a fair number of them.
Mhm.
But yeah, he's certainly. And then he got his ability to do that. I think was sort of recognized. He had that whole relationship with Bob Dylan. They were part of a mutual admiration society between the two of them, which is really
Mhm.
interesting. And Bob Dylan, whether you like it or not, I mean, they gave him a Nobel Prize in literature, right? It's pretty somebody, that's that's as sort of highfalutin as you can get, right? And Bob Dylan certainly thought Johnny Cash was in his same league. So that's all
Definitely.
pretty interesting. Yeah. One thing also I got thinking about too is like, this is Art of Darkness, so we got to talk about dark stuff sometimes. I got thinking, what do you think about, and I'm interested in Kevin's take on this too. Um, did the so we talked in depth about the fact that Johnny Cash had a serious drug problem with amphetamines.
Is there a drug problem that isn't?
A serious, well, yeah, if you can't, yeah, if you can't get them, that's not that serious, I guess.
Fair enough.
But I get wondering, and this gets into like complicated moral territory in a way, but I think it's a reasonable question to ask. It's like, did drugs in the long run, did all of that actually make him better, or was it a hindrance?
Wasn't
I
it?
don't have an
Wasn't it?
answer.
It was a lot of uppers, right? I
A
mean, he
lot
was
of
on
uppers.
barbiturates and things. I mean, I think for him that was the tour life,
Mm-hmm.
wasn't it?
There's a lot of it for sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think it. Yeah, jail.
As I understand it, he started taking a lot of uppers and amphetamines because he was touring so much and he was keeping late hours and stuff. And then he was using
Mhm.
barbiturates to come back down. So he was just
Right.
going back and forth between them to try and modulate as best he could. And then it turned into a problem rather than
Yeah,
a
because those things are
solution.
super addictive, and they weren't even telling you that they were super addictive then. It's just like a doctor gave them to him, so he's like, "Oh,
Right.
okay, I'll take those." Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
But I
Yeah,
mean,
that is
I guess the question is like,
that's a cycle that loop to loop, because you're coming down off meth and
mhm,
you need something to sleep and you're sleeping on a bus.
mhm,
You probably hate yourself too. You're not
yeah,
living your best life, but
right,
you're this incredibly deep soul, one of the deepest souls that's ever lived.
mhm,
You're a musical genius, super talented. You've got this troubled relationship with God. I mean, there's a lot
mhm.
going on in old Dooner's head there.
Yeah, yeah, for real.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah,
I can't say, if you ask me, I can't say, you don't think of him, his drug use in the same way that you would maybe think about, again, I'm going to come back to the Beatles, right?
yeah,
Oh, the Beatles drop acid and suddenly we get Revolver and Pepper, and they
right.
write about it explicitly.
Mhm,
It's tricky. It's like, how do you parse drug use from the person,
mhm.
long periods,
And you can't
yeah,
A/B test it really. You can't see him without it,
sure,
and I because what I got thinking, what really made me think about this was like how powerful those last American recordings albums were, and you're like, would he have been able to? Would they have been as good if he wasn't so beat up by life, mostly under his own own doing? Would they have been as good as they were if his story had been like if it had all just been all
the
good from day one, just like, hey,
uh
we're making a bunch of money, hey, my relationships are great, hey, I'm super, and like then when the 90s come and he's 60, is he able to crank those albums out and they sound that fucking good? I don't know. I don't know. It's not a recommendation for
we really
anybody to
gotta
do
we
anything.
really gotta well, yeah, we're on dangerous ground here, Brad.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't want people to think that you have to abuse yourself
Right.
but this
And you don't.
gets into the real kind of core of what drug abuse is, right? Is it a moral failing? Is it a disease? Is it
Right.
a bit of both? It's very, very complicated stuff. What we
Mhm.
really need to be asking is what drugs was Rick Rubin on?
I think Rick Rubin probably takes a toke now and then, or he did at
Yeah,
one
yeah,
point. Maybe he doesn't anymore.
sure.
I don't
I
know,
think
but
Rick Rubin is on Rick Rubin. He's on
yeah.
another level.
Yeah. I think it might be even harder to say in Cash's case because again, as I understand it, his heavy drug use started relatively early in his career, which is, I mean, he went 0 to 100 pretty quickly as
Yeah.
far as stardom.
Mhm.
So it's like he was still developing his sound while he was getting heavy in the trenches of amphetamine. So
Right.
it's hard to say, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I want to hope that like he would have still been great either way. Maybe there would have lacked some like additional edge or something. Because
Right.
I mean, when you listen to Hurt, like you know
Yeah,
it's
you
real.
believe it. You believe
Right,
that he's had that pain. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well,
I think he still would have been
Mhm.
great but different.
Yeah, certainly would have been different. Yeah, it just I get kind of curious about these sorts of things. Again, not as a recommendation, but part of what our show is, we're trying to figure out what the hell creativity even is. So in a way, I mean, it's sort of our maybe our tertiary, our tertiary thesis here or question. So what is creativity anyway? And there are certainly going to be ways to enhance it or decrease it. You think, okay, well, what if he hadn't been on speed and instead he had, I mean, he's a pretty good guitar player, but what if he had just sort of obsessed about the technicalities of it and become like you don't know what he could have been, right? Incredibly smart guy, super talented. He could have become like Jeff Beck or something. Who knows? Which is a very different kind of artist, right? Yeah. So you were starting to mention some modern people. So you said Jason Isbell. What I guess I'm trying to get out of you is give me some new people to listen to. I listen to a few new guys, but are there other people I'm missing?
Like Kevin mentioned, I would include Coulter Wall, who I'm pretty sure writes all of his stuff. Some of which I have on vinyl. It's great. It's definitely very, very Western. And I'm pretty sure when he's not touring, he spends his time working on a ranch. So
really,
he might be a true blue cowboy musician.
Right.
He's from Saskatchewan. I saw him in Manhattan, which was a very high contrast event. My ex-girlfriend out there. My ex-girlfriend out there was big into country, big into outlaw country, and she got me turned on to Coulter Wall. So I'm having flashbacks to standing there in the middle of New York City watching this guy sing this very soulful country music.
Yeah, interesting.
I would also throw Zach Bryan in there, who's probably a little more mainstream sounding, but again, I think he writes the vast majority, if not all of his stuff, and it's really, really soulful and really well written, especially for a pretty young guy. I'm pretty sure he's younger than me. I think he's like 25 or 26.
Wow. Okay.
He's got a really great sound. And then there's some, a fair bit of people who went largely unnoticed from like the late 80s into probably the late 90s, like Steve Earle. Most people don't know about, but he writes phenomenal country music.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know him from The Wire, but I've never really listened to him, to be honest.
He's well loved. Wait, he's in The Wire?
Isn't he?
I'll look it up in the background.
On the TV show, I'm pretty sure he is.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I think he's in The Wire. Anyway. Yeah. So, okay, I should check out Steve Earle for sure. I know, you're right, Kevin. I know that he is very well regarded, very well loved. Yeah. So
apparently he was in The Wire. I did not know that. Hey, learning stuff.
I think he was what's his name? The junkie, the like real hardcore strung out junkie character. Steve Earle played his sponsor, I think.
Yep, I see him. All right, very cool. Yeah, there you go. All right. Yeah. People love Steve Earle. That name comes up. It comes up a lot once you start getting into this stuff, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
This is one of those things, like if we do any one thing on this episode of the pod, we should try to maybe convert at least one person who's like, what music do you like? Everything but country, except Johnny Cash. Like that guy's out there. That person is still out there right now. And come on, we're reaching out to you right now.
Do
better.
Absolutely. No, we want to country music bill somebody out there a little bit. Though I'm coming from a position where, my familiarity with it is not super deep. But it goes beyond Johnny Cash, but it's not a whole lot deeper than that. I'm really interested in the fact that like these categories are kind of flawed anyway. I mean, I really think they're all influencing each other, right? So country music is taken from the blues, and rock and roll is taken from the blues, and blues is taken from rock and roll and country. They're all sort of the boundaries between these things are super porous. I mean, they're all. I think if you wanted to be a musicology kind of nerd about it, you might even be able to say these are all just folk strains of folk music. Really, we kind of start to think of folk music as a very specific kind of like coffee shop sort of singer songwriter scenario, but really it means sort of the music created by the folk, right? And that Oliver Anthony certainly strikes me as that. It's just like a dude out in the woods playing the guitar, song you wrote, singing the blues,
and recording it for TikTok.
Yeah, well, hey man, it's the modern era.
I think that's that high contrast, and I'm not throwing shade there. I mean, look, what are we doing? We're making a podcast. This is going to go on. Of
course, that's the game. That's the game he has to play in. It's
Of course,
2023. Yeah, what are you
very
gonna do?
interesting, tricky little situation. I think he even sort of talks about that in the song. You know, old soul in the new world. What are you going to do? Yeah, you're
Right.
just gonna, yeah. Interesting times. You know, this is something. Hang on, Brett. This is something that I'm pretty sure I mentioned already. But for me, and I'm sure I'm the only person in the world who has a special relationship to the song "Hurt." Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right,
So
right.
I was growing up in North Dakota. My great aunt and great uncle helped raise me, and we unironically listened to polka. Love us some polka. Good Americaners. And I assume out in North Dakota, still to this day, you can flip onto an AM station and hear polka 24/7. It's a real big deal. And we listen to a lot of country, and we listen to a lot of Johnny Cash. Now, getting into the 90s, I did not continue to listen to polka, and I did not continue to listen to country music. I got really, really into bands like Nine Inch Nails, for example.
Yeah.
Big fan. Had all the discs. Had how to say this? Had bootlegs. I would order $40 bootleg CDs of remixes. I was that kid for Nine Inch Nails. So when Hurt happened, it was like truly two worlds colliding for me.
Yeah.
It was a surreal experience, and I know again, I'm not alone in that. Has anybody had a moment like that in music? Has anything else like that ever happened? That moment where Cash picked up that songbook? I can't think of one. It was a moment.
None come to mind, I don't think. No, that was something else, something special for sure.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to me too, because it reminds me of another thing that Rick Rubin did that also. Do you remember when he did Aerosmith and Run DMC together? They did a Walk This Way.
Yeah, I remember that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And musically, I don't personally care to listen to that now. But I do remember being pretty young when that came out, and I still didn't even have categories of what these music. I mean, that was of an age where I'm like literally a child, and that coming on and just being mystified by it. Sort of like, well, who are these like black dudes in the black leather, and then who is this like Steven Tyler? I wasn't even sure if he was a dude or not. Like, you know what I mean? It's just a very like, and it was like I felt worlds colliding, but I didn't even know what the worlds were. It was a very strange experience. And then Rick Rubin is doing something kind of similar. I mean, he doesn't have the performers together, but he certainly is like trying to force these worlds to meet up with each other, which is pretty cool. I bet he's if you look back through his catalog, he's probably done that a few other times, and they haven't been quite as notable. But yeah, just
this is an interesting period in time too. Now that I'm thinking more about it, you know what movie I just threw on recently was "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" And I don't know if you'll recall when that came out. The album was bigger than the movie.
Yeah,
the CD was bigger than the movie, and Cash recorded "Hurt" in 2002. "Oh Brother" came out in 2000.
Okay.
So you've got this project that the Coens were, and is it T-Bone Burnett?
Yeah.
There was a project going on to kind of reclaim this American folk music tradition. And I unfortunately, I think it led to things like Mumford and Sons and kind of NPR people taking over a little bit.
Yeah.
Like the downstream consequences of that were not great in a lot of cases. But that stuff, like the Oh Brother soundtrack, that's very pure. That's very earnest.
Oh, I still throw that on from time to time for sure. Yeah, I really do.
Not a lick of irony in that at all. It's earnest. It's straight ahead. It's maybe got a little bit of humor, but I wouldn't say it's ironic. And then of course Cash a few years later does this Hurt thing. So they're just, what an interesting time, right on the turn in American culture. You know, the internet's happening. Maybe there's some nostalgia for the past, and then of course right in the middle of it, boom, 2001. We all know what happened during that year. Just JL, do you remember that time very well? What was your were you picking up on a lot of this stuff, or where were you at that time?
With respect to like the music kind of crossover and like full coming into the zeitgeist. '01, I was in 5th grade.
Hmm.
So I don't know. From the first time I saw Brother Where Art Thou, I've loved the movie.
Yeah.
Just mostly for the dialogue, like most Coen Brothers movies for me.
Yeah.
But I didn't see it that way, probably because I wasn't old enough to kind of recognize that like this was a bit of a moment, like you said. Where it's coming in like people who would absolutely not otherwise listen to this music are like, this is enjoyable. I like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I was a bit young for that, I think.
That's fair. I think it does make me wonder if there's something kind of similar happening now, actually, with this Oliver Anthony thing. And it literally is it's kind of a moment culturally. And I know that people are listening to like, you're getting people like Tyler Childers on NPR I know some people love the guy, some people don't, but still on, more sort of being mainstreamed. Whereas for the most part, country music has always operated. I think a lot of people's perception is it sort of operates as its own entire music ecology, sort of separate from everything else. It doesn't really, but I feel like
unfortunate
that's
though, and that's a psyop big time. Yeah. I mean, they talk about musicologists talk about that. The two Americas. You have the Beatles America, rock and roll America, and then you had Johnny Cash America, and that's really what the Rubin business kind of signified was the merging of those two things and saying we're not separate.
Right.
It's all one. It's all of a part. I don't really know what the answer is there, but that is strange that should happen to country music because it is a uniquely American style and genre. We should be constantly riveted by new country acts doing new things, but it just doesn't get into the mainstream. Why do you think that is, JL? What do you think's going on there? Why are they psyoping us about this?
Well, I have no shortage of opinions, but to buttress your point you made a few minutes ago, I think it's definitely within the last, I'll say 15 years, but definitely at least the last 8 to 10 you see this like kind of amalgamation trying to make like an everyman's kind of music has really serviced like a very large portion of what you'll hear, maybe if not all of what you'll hear on a country music station has been created within the last 5 years. It's all very recent stuff. It sounds extremely generic. Most of the time you can't tell if it's pop or if it's country. There's like rap melodies, there's drum beats. It's as far as like it's like pop country, kind of like stadium country, I call it, is very much like it's accelerating in the way that it's becoming kind of one and the same with pop, to the point where you're going to go on a pop station and you're going to hear let's say Luke Combs, who's pretty big in country music right now, or go on a country station and hear someone who also does rap in some kind of strange way. It's odd. It's definitely becoming more blobby and less distinct kind of musical styles.
Yeah. Don't try that in a small town.
Don't.
we haven't talked about that yet. What do we think about that? Not to get too political, but that was another moment recently where country music kind of got into the zeitgeist. But that was kind of a pop country piece, wasn't it?
I don't know how poppy I would call it. It was pretty on brand for Jason Aldean as far as his usual style, which is again pretty middle of the road as far as modern country goes. I mean, I thought it was hilarious at the Outlash, and it seems all extremely contrived to me because it's. Yeah. I mean, I read the lyrics; it's pretty reasonable, you know. By the average person's standards, but I don't know. It just lends credence. Go ahead.
No, sorry, JL. I think it's the video that principally got people. I'm from a small town.
Yeah.
I think about America. You're driving around, like I can drive to Wisconsin, I can drive to kind of outstate Minnesota here, and every town you drive up to, I could even drive up to White Bear Lake here, and the first thing you see when you drive in is one of those signs, "Welcome to White Bear Lake, go Bears," and you see the Rotary, the Freemasons,
Yeah.
Or the K, is it the KCs? All
Uh-huh.
of that, all of those little de Tocqueville, the little platoons, right? Maybe, depends on where you are. You might see Catholic Church, typically not, but okay, all right. You might see, the Knights of Columbus. Okay, we're all here. We're all here.
Yeah.
Don't try any shit.
Right.
Is what
I never thought of it that way.
Oh yeah, that's what I see when I pass by those signs. And then of course we got neighborhood watch. I mean, you have some of those in a big town too, but yeah, that's a real sentiment. It's like, hey, we're tough guys too.
Right.
So I don't know what the punchline of that is, but very interesting. So we had kind of two events recently in mainstream, kind of in the zeitgeist, at least on the Bird website, where country music was the main character for a minute.
Yeah. It's quite interesting. And it makes me think too, JL, we were talking about this sort of the blurriness into pop music and there being a certain contrivance to this. I don't have strong feelings about Taylor Swift, but she's sort of like emblematic because she started out as a country musician, right? Ostensibly.
Yes.
And that has become like pure 100% pop. I think I'm assuming. I haven't even honestly heard a Taylor Swift song recently. I probably heard it.
We're going to get totally mobbed by the Swifties here. You've got to be careful.
We love you, Swifties.
I texted my sister.
I'm one of them. Fuck it.
Are you? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Really?
I love some Taylor Swift.
Okay.
Okay. Swift pill me, JL. Where should I start?
How well I'm going to be able to do that. I just think I think her music is what pop music ought to be, which is catchy, relatable, and really well written. And I think she does all of those extremely well.
Okay.
I'm compared, relativistically to her peers in the pop music scene.
Right.
The fact that she still writes a lot of her own stuff, whereas I think probably 95% of people in pop do not.
Right.
That alone, I think, makes her stand out in my mind. But I'm not afraid to say I don't listen to any other pop music really. But Taylor Swift, yeah,
I don't doubt it. Like I said at the beginning, I was like, I don't really have any opinions on it, but it is certainly a phenomena. Like people clearly are losing, are going crazy for her. So there has to be some talent there.
I texted my sister recently of the Gilda Radner episode fame, and she didn't get back to me right away, which fine. When she finally did, she was like, "Sorry, I didn't reply. I was at the Taylor Swift show." And then I was like, "Oh yeah, she's an OG Swiftie." And my sister's been on board with this stuff for a long time. The only pop music I've been listening to this summer on repeat is the excerpt of Planet of the Bass. And I've been waiting for the full song to come out. Have you not heard Planet of the Bass, Brad?
No. What is
this is this thing that went viral. The comedian, he did the little he released like a 50-second music video. He's done some variations of it where he oh my God, really? My timeline is just full of this and you're not seeing any of it. No, he's he's a comedian and he did a song and the headline or the title on the card, when it shows up on TikTok says every European dance hit from the 90s.
Oh, I did sort of see this.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a banger. Yeah. I can't wait for the full song to come out. And he's like doing this and then he raps in the middle. That's been making me very happy. That's my summer bop all summer. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Good stuff. JL, can I, because I'm not familiar with, I want to check out Cowboy Church. I know that Brad was living in it. And so sell me on that. Tell me about your book.
It centers on a disabled man. I wasn't explicit about his age, but he's heavy on some pills, and he is estranged from his family, who are cattle ranchers, and he owns a bar called the Cowboy Church. Spoiler, it's not an actual church. Excuse me. And some malicious misfortune befalls his family, not him directly, but his family. And he has like this kind of inner turmoil about what he's supposed to do about it, given the fact that he doesn't really like his family. He doesn't get along with them. He, by and large, doesn't communicate or interact with them. Sorry, my dogs are being gremlins. And so he has this back and forth with himself about whether he should intervene in some kind of way as best he can. I mean, he has rheumatoid arthritis, so standing for him is difficult, much less avenging his old and sickly father. And he eventually comes to the decision that he has to do something because family is family, even if you hate them.
Mm.
And the I guess I won't reveal the
no, don't give any more than that. That's great. Yeah, and do check this out, people. Got to support our independent writers. We're holding, it's there's a lot of just like we're talking about music, everything gets glommed together and sort of like processed and weird and what are those things when they show a movie to a group of people? Focus tests.
Yeah, they
focus group. Yeah,
focus group. Everything is sort of committed and focus grouped to death. But JL is one of these people.
Right, and then even after the fact, what gets through to your feed is heavily manipulated by the algo. So this is a critic or a cry in the dark for independent media of all kinds. So yeah, do check that out. I was doing a little bit of reading here on the Wikipedia in the background, and one thing I'm not sure we covered in the core episode, there's an entire section in Johnny Cash's bio on Wikipedia about his activism for Native Americans. Mm-hmm. Have you seen that? I mean,
the biggest thing, the most public highlight was his album, Something of Tears.
Bitter Tears, right. Ballads of the American Indian. Yeah. He was adopted into the Seneca, a clan of the Seneca tribe.
Huh. That's pretty cool.
So, yeah, very interesting. I was not familiar with that. That's another thing about him is was he always political? Probably not always, but at a certain point in his life, he became, Folsom, that feels extremely political. Any thoughts on that, JL?
I don't think that was like that. I didn't get that impression that was always something he had in mind since the beginning of his career. I suspected that came out because he had some notoriety and traction and a little more insulation to get experimental with it and say some stuff that he maybe couldn't have, pre-stardom explosion that would have maybe gotten him, whatever the 1960s equivalent of being canceled was, not getting a record deal, I guess. So maybe he found, he was comfortable enough, I guess, or just felt like he could pull it off, I guess, for lack of a better word, later into his career. I guess that was really like the middle of his career, but
yeah. There's a certain thing where our sense of when we say something being political, it's so kind of warped. I mean, Johnny Cash, I think, was probably doing things that we would now consider political, but it's not like he was doing it for his side or something. I think he saw things that he felt a certain way about and responded to them according to what he thought was the right thing to do, which maybe that sounds naive, but you know what I mean? Like, I think in part he did the prison thing, he probably thought it was a good record, but I think there was definitely a part of him who was like, well, nobody does anything for these guys. Why don't I do something for these guys? Which, now I don't even, our political lens tends to be so much of like, did he do it for the Democrats or the Republicans kind of thing? You know what I mean? Where it's like, like, but there's I guess it kind of depends on how you define politics. I mean, his whole wearing black was purportedly about holding up a sign for the downtrodden, right? And the people who weren't, the people who are on the outside. So
it's definitely, I think you could definitely call it social activism. And there was probably a little bit more distinct difference between social activism and strictly political maneuvering in that era. Today, I wouldn't say there's hardly any difference for whatever reason. We don't have to get into that, but right. I think it would suffice to call it just social activism. Sure.
Right. Yeah, no, that's well put. I think that's probably true. It's not so much caught up in the various maneuverings and strategies. It's just actually trying to do something. Yeah, interesting.
He was larger. This is something we haven't really. This goes without saying, but he was larger than life. I mean, the dude is just monolithic. You just look back at his life and it's just an incredible story. And obviously the biopic is probably one of the better biopics that's ever been made, but even that doesn't capture the whole of this life.
No.
Yeah, I saw you nodding there, Jail. What do you think about the movie? Yeah,
I haven't seen it in quite a while. I've only seen it a handful of times, but the last one was been a while ago. I need to rewatch it. But I enjoyed it. I like Joaquin Phoenix and Reese. You know, I thought it was quite good. Yeah.
Yeah.
The George and Tammy series too is pretty good on Showtime. Yeah, that's worth a quick binge if you haven't seen that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, we're officially declaring, country music as being released from the ghetto on this episode.
Yeah, that's right.
And
that's right.
Dale, you're saying we have to take over Nashville on your Twitter. Okay, what do you mean by this?
I mean, it's kind of tongue in cheek, kind of isn't, but just the whatever kind of subterfuge that has brought forth extremely generic, very milquetoast country music that is the only thing that's played on country radio and the only thing that makes waves or gets noticed for whatever reason. It's all just extremely generic, extremely produced, frequently overproduced, and has, in my opinion, too much influence from other genres like rap or pop. And I just I don't know. I feel like we need to dose it and start over.
So I'm down for that. Like, all right, cool. Do you think the nature of, like, let's say there is a renaissance, right, and we get closer to how you might want to see it, and how probably a lot of people
a revival in this case, not a renaissance.
Yeah, renaissance. That's true. Well, that's kind of goes to my point. Is like, does that mean something like going back to its roots and stripping it back, or does it mean like getting more experimental with it in some? I don't know what that would mean exactly, but like, is it about it evolving and continuing to evolve into something, or is it about going back, I guess, or some combination maybe?
I'd say probably a combination. And I mean, I understand at the end of the day, it's probably motive, it's probably profit driven. I mean, if there's 100,000 diehard country fans that are listening to Merle Haggard every day like me, that's great. That'll make some money. But if we, water it down a little here, water it down a little there, take out some spice, take out the drug talks and whoring and cocaine and stuff, and suddenly 10 times as many people want to listen and buy that album. Well, financially, that makes perfect sense. But as a result, as a downstream consequence, then it becomes less country. And obviously, it'd be difficult to really nail down a definition for country. But what's on the radio right now is a very, very, very far cry from what was on 20 years ago. And I would say there's been a greater change in country music than any other genre in the last 20 years by a very wide margin.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Gail, have you ever made like a playlist, like a Spotify playlist? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'd listen to a Jail Mackey Cowboy Church Spotify playlist. That's an idea.
I mean, not with the express intention of like getting converts,
right?
But because I think it's just under my my government name.
Right.
But I could, if you wanted me to, and I could send it to you. Sure.
No,
sure.
I mean, if you care to, and you want to do it in a way that's anonymous, I would definitely add that to the show notes for sure. Optional. I don't want to give you homework, but I would dig that, and I think we might get some listeners. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'll do that.
Oh, rock and roll. Oh, that's amazing. Well, I know we're gonna go for a few minutes more here, and then we're gonna come back and talk more Johnny Cash on the After Dark. Brad has some very specific things. Sounds like he got held up in Jamaica.
Yeah, robbed at gunpoint. Yeah,
robbed at gunpoint. Okay, that's going to be fun. This is a little self-serving, but one of the reasons I got to thinking about the Spotify playlist is that I've started work with a group of collaborators on a musical about Marvin Heemeyer, the Killdozer guy. It's going to be called Killdozer, the musical. And yeah, oh yeah, I already have songs, I already have ideas in mind, and if you want to hear that playlist which I made, which I think speaks to the conversation we've just had, go to the show notes for this episode at artofdarkpod.com. I am adding Killdozer the musical, an unreasonable playlist to the show notes. I've got Johnny Cash on here. Okay. I've got Wumpscut. I've got Killer Mike. I got John Philip Sousa. I have the Highwaymen. I've got KMFDM, Health, LP, Ulver, Pantera, David Bowie. You're not going to want to miss this playlist. Wow. I'm very proud of this playlist.
That sounds good. Nobody listens to Sousa anymore.
Yeah,
we need to return to Sousa.
That could probably heal the nation.
I would first have to arrive there because I don't know who or what that is.
He's the inventor of he plays marching music, basically.
Boom, boom, boom. Yeah. So it's just like the Stars and Stripes Forever.
It's basically. I don't think that's it. Yeah, but could be Sousa.
Oompy marching music. Yeah.
He invented like a smaller tuba called the sousaphone. It's just like a tuba, but it's like a little smaller. That's named after him. Yeah. That's some real.
Definitely give this playlist a try. Yeah.
We'll check it out.
It's a very exciting playlist. All right. JL, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
We've got an open door policy on Art of Darkness. You want to give people your kind of final plugs, and then we'll close this down and come back on After
Dark? Sure. Buy my novella if you want. The Cowboy Church. Edited by the fantastic Mr. Brad Kelly. So it's going to be good. That's on Amazon only, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Double Dealer is at DBL Dealer, one word, on Twitter. And I'm still working on a website for that.
Yeah.
It takes a while.
For sure. Let me ask one more question about the Double Dealer. So what you may have already answered this, but refresh me. What kind of writing is going to be in this? What's your angle? What do you, Mm-hmm.
We didn't want to start out with too narrow of a focus. So I would have loved to focus on Southern fiction or Southern Gothic fiction, but I don't think there's enough people writing that. It's me and like 3 other people.
Mm-hmm.
So we just started out with the only guardrails we put on to start with was fiction that's apolitical, because I'm tired of reading libs are bad stories that are very thinly veiled, like political manifestos.
Whoa, you're telling me libs are bad? Go on.
I'm hearing it now for the first time.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. I mean, there's a place and time for that, and certainly a lot of people eat that up. I mean, Passage Press sells out, and that's great for them, but I'm just personally tired of reading that. Yeah. If a story wants to be good first and then have political undertones, that's gravy for me, but I need more meat on the bone.
I get it for sure.
Yeah. Maybe libs are good sometimes. Maybe they're not all wrong all the time. Yeah, it's a real pickle. The political divisiveness that we have to endure right now, it's not the most extreme that it's ever been. I think people are quick to say that, but it is pretty extreme, and it has a way of cleaving people in the wrong way, separating people, tearing people apart, making people paranoid. Americans love paranoia. That's one of our very favorite things. That's one of our key modes. And so sort of the whole internet exacerbates that. Any last words for the main episode here, Brad? I'm really excited for this playlist, by the way, JL. There's no rush, take your time, but I will throw it into the show notes. Yeah. We will make some noise about that on social media and in the Telegram, t.me/artofdarkpod. You want to get in there. We've got a really fun group of people in the chat, and shout out to the Telegram folks. Brad.
No, I don't have anything else except thank you to J.L. Mackey. People buy his book. Look out for the Double Dealer. I have a feeling that I know he's pulled together a very interesting group of people, and I think what comes out of that is going to be really cool. The literary magazine world, just like just like Nashville, maybe needs a little bit of rehabilitation. And I think this is a step in the right direction. There's other people doing cool stuff out there. Don't get me wrong, but we got to keep moving.
Stop
this thing.
saying rehabilitation. Yeah. Stop saying renaissance. Start saying revival.
Okay, you got it. All right. Amen.